Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Rory Canavan, and I'm going to be taking you through Process of the Month this month. We're looking at the software removal process. So for those that haven't tuned into the channel yet, or to the monthly podcast that we actually do, I'm just going to run through an agenda so you get an idea of what to expect over the next 10 or so minutes. We're going to address the primary and secondary objectives of the process as they've been modelled. We're going to offer a process run through, and again we'll have some diagrams to show you activities and good and bad steps alike. And the bad steps that I mentioned there, the process or potential banana skins that are associated with this process. So things to watch out for when looking to implement this in your environment. We've got a doffing of caps that we do on a monthly basis just to say thank you very much to our various sponsors who have helped us actually get this process and the process kit that it forms part of to where it is today. And then we're going to wrap up by looking at which process is coming up next month and also a few contact details there. So for our primary objective, because there is only one for this specific process, and that's to execute the removal of red software. Now, what we mean by red software is that if you had the chance to look at our previous podcasts, you'll see that we look to categorize software on a red, amber, or green basis. So I know some financial institutions like to use the acronym buy, hold, or sell. But essentially, red software are titles that have been deemed unusable and no longer required on the IT estate, so we get rid of them then at that point. We also have a secondary objective, and that's to advise HR or our IT training department, or whoever looks after training, to make sure that those requirements for software that might be coming in to replace those red titles is executed, so we make sure that people are as effective and productive as they were with the old software as a minimum. So we look to move on to the process itself. This is how it models out in ARIS as modeled by Sam Charter. We have 5 processes. It looks like 6, but there's 2 calls on there from the orphan data process that can potentially call the software removal process, and it's good to have. It's good to have because it signifies to Sam just how important it is to actually remove software as well as it is to install it. We have our asset use verification process, so it could be that either an installation of software or a device has changed state, and therefore that changes the state and license nature of that installation. And if it's deemed in that change state it's no longer required to the business, then we get rid of that software. We uninstall it. And as an example, it might be that as part of a technology stack that's gone from development to live, there are legacy elements of development software that were only supposed to be in a development environment. Well, they need to come off the live installation there. It could be that we've got here, you see, a software rationalization process, and this is one that Kylie covered so well in our previous vlog, was that, say, for example, you have 20 PDF readers in your IT estate, but you only need 5. What are you going to do about those other 15 then at that point? Well, let's get rid of them. Let's consolidate the reader sort of PDF reader requirement there. We have an orphan data process, and by that I'm going to cover that in a subsequent vlog, so I'll not bore you with the details just yet. I'll just keep the suspense going there. And we also have a hardware disposal process. This software removal process is nested within the hardware disposal process. If you're going to get rid of hardware, you need to make sure that actually you take the software off the devices. Just belt and braces really as much as anything, because the liability is on your organization should that software escape your IT estate then at that point. We also have the maintainer supported software catalog process, and this is the general sort of sit down and assess which software titles we actually want on our IT estate kind of a process. and this too calls on categorizing software as red and therefore requiring removal through the removal process. So the impact of the removal process is fairly significant. It really does play a very important part in SAM generally, just as you can assess by the number of processes that actually call upon it. So the first step we have in the software removal process is actually the collation exercise that takes place between all these activities to make sure that we have all our red titles lined up in a row, in a nice row, ready for our apps packaging team or our removal team, whoever is actually assigned the activity to remove that software. One thing about this particular step, how frequently is it called? Well, it depends on how many times it's called upon by these processors. It could be that you're fairly dynamic, and as the need arises, let's remove the software. It may be that actually the pains in actually removing software and the activities behind it and the procedures of everything means that you save this up for a weekly or a fortnightly activity. It's whatever is dictated to really by your resources and your procedures and protocols that you have in place. Excuse me. So the next thing we look to do is to make sure that prior to that software actually being removed, if it is a major going to offer major impact to the business to have that software removed, that we take the time at 1.20 to communicate this to potential stakeholders, be they end users, be they product managers. The list goes on. Think about anybody who could potentially touch a title that you're about to remove. These people need to be informed that the software is going. We move on to page B, and you see there's a split in activity here, and the top stream of activity looks to address the secondary objective that we highlighted. So if we're actually removing red titles, we perhaps need to take the time to compare those red titles to the green titles that we actually have in place. Either its existing software, on the software estate, or it's potentially new titles that are coming in. But we need to make that comparison so we can give HR or the IT training department, whoever is actually addressing training within your company, an option to communicate a suggested training plan at that point. It could be minor, it could be significant. It depends on the change in the software. The bottom stream of activity is the line of steps that are perhaps more well associated with actual removal of software. So strangely enough, at 1.50, we have remove red software titles as the activity. And one thing we want to make sure, if we're doing this and we want to do it right, is that we make sure we remove all the software. So we have a subsequent sort of quality assurance loop here to make sure that we have actually done that. So at 1.60, we will conduct an inventory sweep. And at 1.70, we will analyze the inventory data. Now, again, we could argue that this is done by the apps packaging team or who is ever overseeing the deployment suite and or the removal activity. And again, it's an assumption that it's one and the same here. But it may be that you want to do that inventory analysis in the SAM suite. So that would be the SAM manager who would take care of that, and it would be the SAM suite actually conducting that activity. Again, whatever works best for you, whoever does it, just make sure it's done properly. So if for any reason we find that software hasn't been removed, then we've got this loop back to make sure that we can go through the activity again and get rid of those red titles, and we feed back to page B then at that point. If we find that all our red titles have been removed and we're happy to move forward, then we've got a few more activities here. Now you can see that we've got a breakout loop here, possibly to a hardware disposal process. As I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, our software removal process is nested within a hardware removal process, just to make sure that we do remove all software prior to a hardware device actually leaving the organization. We also have a step up here to refresh config management schemas. So if we have a red title that was part of a standard build, be it a laptop, be it a server, be it a desktop device, we want to make sure that we don't, on the one instance, get rid of those titles and then have another bit of the organization actually rolling out red titles as well. So those config schemas need refreshing to do that. And finally, we have an activity here to archive red title POE. Sorry, proof of entitlement, that's what that stands for there. We have in this model, as it's modeled, the config manager is keeping proof of entitlement in his CMDB. Obviously, there'll need to be some element or record of that entitlement being placed into the SAM suite too. So you might want to actually add SAM suite here and add SAM manager here as well. They might have some record of the proof of entitlement in the SAM suite. It depends on to what level of scanning you're actually doing to say that your proof of entitlement is resident there too. So some potential banana skins then. This process is never run. It's amazing how many organizations I go into who are all about making sure that they've got the licenses to match the installs, but never actually think to actually remove the software that they're no longer using. Don't forget, of course, you can find that you've got software installed, and if it just sits there and festers, you could be presented with bills for support and maintenance on software you're never using. And the contracts department will have no idea. They're none the wiser as far as they're concerned. The IT department is still using it, so yeah, we'd better pay that. This process is not run often enough, so you might have a great clear out only to find out that there's some software sort of 6, 8, 12 months along the line that's installed, and somebody leaves, and all of a sudden you could be offering an information security backdoor into your IT estate. And again, in and of itself, that's not, might not be a problem if they're a good egg who's gone on, but they could be borrowing in, taking sales data, taking customer data, or even worse, actually using it as a pipeline to put malware back into the organization. Finally, we have the assumption that users do not require any training on new titles. Please don't assume that. It's scary how much people forget when a color is changed, or a schema is changed, or a GUI is changed. 5 minutes explaining to them how a new bit of software works over an old bit of software can make the world of difference and keep the company productive. Much love to our sponsors at this point. I'd like to say thank you very much to Aspera, Flexera and Snow for helping us out in actually taking advertising in the SAM Charter Process Kit, and for their guidance and support over the years. And the same can be said of softwaremanagement.org, Kylie Fowler at ITAM Intelligence, and Medora Consulting. Thank you all very much. Not forgetting, of course, John Grubb at Software Advocates and the chaps at Licensing School, thank you so much, and Craig Garenti and his team at Palisade Compliance. And last but not least, a big thank you to Chris Goff and his team at Derived Logic. If what you've seen is of interest and you would like to investigate further how these processes and templates can actually help you embed good and best practice in your SAM activities, please take the time to go to the link below there, and you can actually buy your own kit then if you wish. Next month, we're looking at the software request process. As ever, if you wish to get in touch, if anything you've seen causes questions, or you want to reach out, by all means, please email me at rory.canavan@samcharter.com. If you wish to, you can go to Twitter. I occasionally post SAM and non-SAM stuff actually on @StoryByRory. And as ever, I'm a huge advocate of LinkedIn and a very heavy user of that. So please reach out to me on my profile there. I'll happily connect with you. That leaves me to say thank you very much for your time, and do keep an eye out for the software request process next month. Thank you.